In the women's prison shower, there is a mysterious woman who even showers with a collar on. She is elegant and rarely speaks, but her fellow inmates fear her, because you see her hair constantly seeping black ink, a dye to hide her identity. It wasn't until the ink stained her white back that it drew everyone's attention. She slowly turned around, her dark green hair exuding an eerie aura, and her deep eyes sent chills down people's spines. She is accustomed to the strange looks from others, because she is Lorna, the daughter of Magneto. Lorna has perfectly inherited her father's powers, able to control magnetic fields at will. Any metal in her hands is a lethal weapon. Anyone who crosses her is doomed. Like this clueless guy who knew Lorna was a mutant but still asked her to show her powers. Lorna didn't refuse. Her hands lit up with green light, and the car outside levitated instantly. The guy was dumbfounded, his mouth nearly reaching the back of his head, but his joy was premature. Lorna exerted her power, slamming the car to the ground, rendering it scrap. Lorna smirked as if to say, "This is what happens when you provoke me." Yet, despite her extraordinary powers, she remains at the bottom of society, constantly on the run. In a world coexisting with ordinary humans, being a mutant is a crime in itself. Faced with the police surrounding her, Lorna doesn't intend to surrender. With a forceful motion, she destroyed all the police cars instantly, thinking they would retreat. She was surprised when they intensified their attack, firing wildly. Out of options, Lorna used her powers again, disarming 2 policemen. Though she could control the bullet's path, she didn't want to kill, so she trapped the police in their cars, but knew this wasn't a long-term solution. Luckily, Marcos stepped in, his hands emitting blinding white light, forcing the police to shield their eyes. They seized the chance to escape the warehouse, only to be shot from behind by a policeman. Marcos fell, wounded, and Lorna lost control of her emotions. Anger surged within her, and she unleashed her powers in frustration. Marcos urged her not to linger, but Lorna, in her rage, wouldn't listen. She threw a policeman into a dumpster with all her strength, but was herself hit by a taser. Losing her combat abilities, she was imprisoned, adding insult to injury. Although the police fired first, she was charged with attempted murder, with harsher penalties for mutants. It was almost a death sentence. Yet, Lorna remained calm. Even when Reed offered her a deal to reduce her sentence in exchange for betraying her allies, she didn't care, as death seemed like a relief. But Reed, recklessly entering the glass room, made Lorna laugh. "You accuse me of attempted murder? Let me show you what that really means." Sensing the steel pin in Reed's knee, she manipulated it, causing Reed immense pain. But Reed, unfazed, presented a report, making Lorna's face darken. She never expected Reed to use her child to coerce her. Trapped in a dilemma, Lorna broke down completely, and her reckless actions led to heavier punishment. She was transferred to the notorious Lakewood prison, spat on by an inmate upon arrival. Just as she was about to retaliate, a guard stopped her. Passing another cell, she saw a completely white person with a collar. Realizing they must be a mutant too, back in her cell, Lorna surveyed the surroundings, noticing the abundance of metal, making it a potential weapon cache. She attempted to use her powers to escape, only to be struck dizzy. Realizing her powers didn't work, she tried to ask someone, but was met with mocking laughter. Only a sympathetic inmate across the cell revealed the truth. The collar suppressed their powers. She said no mutant had ever left this place alive. Lorna, who would have laughed it off before, now had to think of her unborn baby and find a way out. During mealtime, she tried to befriend the other mutant to learn more about the collars, but the mutant, avoiding her gaze, quickly left, warning Lorna to stay away. Seeing the murderous look from the prison boss, Lorna understood everything. During exercise time, Lorna observed the prison's layout, realizing the high walls and guards made escape without powers impossible. Just as she planned her next move, the boss confronted her, demanding she clean her shoes. Proud Lorna refused.
"Oh, believe me, you don't want to do that. You see, out there, you got powers. But in here, I got powers."
Mocking the boss's scar, a result of a mutant's attack.
Let me guess, you get those, beauty marks from one of us?
Intent on escaping, Lorna ignored the boss, turning to leave, but a henchman attacked from behind, raining punches on Lorna's face. Seeing her beaten to a bloody mess, the prison bully grew even more arrogant.
"I heard you're knocked up. Let's see how tough that little mutie baby is."
Fueled by maternal instinct, Lorna finally refused to endure it any longer. Ignoring the pain from the collar's shocks, she used her powers to pin the bully against the railing. Before she could catch her breath, she was met with punches and kicks from the bully's henchmen. Surrounded by inmates who just sighed, The worst part was that despite them starting the fight, the guards indiscriminately threw Lorna into solitary confinement. Is it just because she's a mutant that she deserves this unfair treatment? Like a dog with a collar, enduring the cold and damp environment? Pain and humiliation flooded her mind as she struggled to endure the time with only her memories to hold on to. But even so, the Sentinel services wouldn't let her go, demanding Lorna reveal the whereabouts of her child's father to reunite them in prison. Otherwise, they threatened to cause a miscarriage. Thinking of the unborn life used as a bargaining chip, Lorna grew more determined. She persuaded herself to overcome her fear of the collar, preparing to use her powers to escape. The collar emitted a sharp warning, as if reminding her not to overestimate herself. But Lorna wouldn't yield. She endured the excruciating pain and challenged fate once more. As the iron door opened, her stamina reached its limit. Her legs trembled uncontrollably as she crawled out with the last of her strength. But she fainted from exhaustion after just a few steps. In a haze, she returned to the day she and Marcos fell in love. Lorna waltzed beautifully in the air. Marcos shattered a bottle on the ground, reflecting a beautiful light with the glass shards. At the moment their fingers touched, a stunning aurora appeared before them. It was a chemical reaction of light and magnetism. They kissed under the aurora, but it was just a dream, and her escape plan was shattered by the arrival of the guards. To prevent another escape, the authorities decided to transfer Lorna to a special prison. With prior experience, even the prisoner transport vehicle was specially designed. The doors were made of tempered glass, with restraints for hands and feet, and there were no metal objects inside. A painstaking effort. To her surprise, Reed, who once used her child to coerce her, was now a prisoner too. Reed apologized for before and suggested they work together to escape. At first, Lorna didn't buy it, but for the sake of her child, she put aside her grudge. Reed said someone was arranged to rescue them, and they just needed to wait for the right moment. Soon, the opportunity came. The transport vehicle suddenly shook violently as if it hit something. Jace immediately ordered the area to be sealed off, deploying all available forces. The mutants didn't expect so many enemies and sent an invisible man, but before he could approach, his powers failed. As he tried to flee, he was shot twice by the Sentinels. Marcos, seeing the dire situation, grew anxious. Not only his powers, but all the mutants' abilities were failing. Looking around, he realized it was their fallen comrade, Pulse, who could suppress mutant abilities. In desperation, Marcos used a handgun to draw enemy fire, risking his life to create an opportunity for Lorna. The guards were ordered to move the prisoners. Lorna knew it was time. As soon as they were unshackled, they attacked the guards. But as ordinary people with bound hands, they were quickly overpowered and locked up again. To make matters worse, Marcos was out of bullets. Despite using all his strength, his powers wouldn't work. In his despair, John lunged at a guard, disarming him with a few swift moves. With his extraordinary skills, John quickly subdued the guards. He then disrupted Pulse's power, restoring Lorna's abilities. Though she lacked usable metal, Reed had an idea.
My leg. The metal screw in my leg.
Seeing his determined eyes, Lorna didn't hesitate. Using her powers to extract the steel pin from his leg, she then used it to unlock her restraints. The guards panicked and called for reinforcements, but it was too late. With a wave of Lorna's hand, the back door of the vehicle fell open. Lorna emerged, and the agents opened fire. But bullets are metal. Lorna deflected them with a gesture. She then disarmed everyone with a powerful pull. Jace had no choice but to order a retreat. Lorna embraced Marcos, but there was no time for reunion. John sensed drones approaching. To buy time, Marcos decided to risk himself again, but Lorna refused to leave him. Marcos reluctantly agreed to meet at headquarters, but trouble came faster than expected. Lorna tried to use her powers to take down the drone, only to find it out of her control. Marcos's powers could hit it but struggled to lock onto its exact position. Lorna had a sudden idea and removed the rearview mirror, making it fly out of the car window, allowing them to see the drone. Marcos used his abilities to reflect light, easily taking down the drone. But before they could celebrate, they realized the road ahead was blocked. Marcos was about to change course, but Lorna controlled the steering wheel, driving straight toward the Sentinels, stopping right in front of them. Jace thought they were surrendering, but was it really that simple? Lorna stepped out of the car, a sly smile on her face. She completely ignored the bullets flying her way, flicking her hand to throw a Sentinel. With another wave, Jace's gun was in her possession.
Babe, we have to go.
No, we're going, but this one's coming with us.
Lorna then took Jace to an abandoned warehouse, using steel rods from the pillars to bind his neck tightly. If she didn't still need him, today would be his last day. Driven by vengeance, Lorna recalled how Jace had used her unborn child to coerce her. Though the agent wasn't pregnant, Lorna had plenty of tricks up her sleeve. She called her ally Dreamer to perform a memory search on him, a process not many could endure. To find useful clues, Dreamer had to rearrange all of Jace's memories. Everyone has painful memories, and Jace's expression showed how much he was suffering. Lorna thought things were going well until Jace's team arrived faster than expected. Hundreds of officers surrounded them, leaving no escape. To buy Dreamer time, Lorna used her powers again. With a gesture, dozens of steel rods floated in the air, and she directed them like a conductor. The rods flew out the windows, crashing down onto the police cars. The Sentinels, never having seen such a display, ducked for cover. Lorna was clearly showing them a lesson. The Sentinel leader, though cautious of a full assault, devised a countermeasure, ordering his team to wear gas masks and fire tear gas inside. Thick smoke filled the room, forcing them to retreat. Their efforts weren't in vain. Dreamer managed to extract an image of a building from Jace's memories. It seemed many comrades were held there. To investigate, Lorna disguised herself as a lost girl to lure the guards. The two guards thought they were lucky but didn't realize they were trapped. Lorna used her powers to lift a guard's gun belt, suspending him in mid-air. The other guard fired, but the bullets obeyed Lorna's command. She pulled the guard over for questioning, but he wasn't cooperative.
Well, let's see if it can help you remember.
Though they got the information they needed, Lorna wasn't pleased. With their small number, rescuing their comrades seemed impossible. However, she decided to select a few potential mutant children for training. Her selection method was questionable, and she ended up choosing only 3. The first was Wes, who could create illusions to confuse and distract, making him a good support. The other 2 were siblings, Lauren and Andy. Lauren could condense air molecules into walls with growing hardness. Andy, on the other hand, could disrupt molecular cohesion, but his powers were newly awakened and unstable. Among the 3, Andy was the strongest, and Lorna paid special attention to him.
On your right!
Soon, the kids faced their first mission. Andy, with Marcos, was to steal information. Lauren and Wes, led by Lorna, were to handle support and retreat. Before they could launch the attack, they were stopped by traffic police. Being discovered now would mean failure. Experienced Marcos had an idea. He used his powers to absorb light from under the car. The cabin plunged into darkness, even interfering with the police's flashlight. As the officer was about to inspect, he received an urgent call, letting them pass unscathed to the mission site. Andy then showcased his powers, making the wall crack and break, creating a big hole. They split up, with Reed leading them to the archive room. Marcos used his light powers to cut open the case and retrieve the hard drive, while Reed found mutant files, but they were spotted by guards. They hurriedly burned the archive room and fled. The police had set up roadblocks, ready to catch them. It was now up to the support team. Lorna instructed Marcos not to stop no matter what. Though puzzled, Marcos trusted her. The driver ignored the roadblock, speeding forward. With warnings ignored, the police ordered to shoot to kill. At the right moment, Lorna intercepted the barrage of bullets. Lauren followed by creating an air wall under the truck, lifting it over the police barricade. At this moment, Lorna was reaching her limit but still intercepted the bullets flying at the truck, ensuring a safe landing. Although they narrowly escaped, it wasn't time to relax yet. Wes immediately used his powers to create an illusion, splitting the truck in 2. Seeing this, the police quickly split into 2 groups to pursue. The rail truck kept driving forward. His cleverness even made Lorna look at him in a new light. However, their luck soon turned. While trying to rescue their comrades, they discovered a traitor in their midst. Realizing she was exposed, she launched an attack, kicking John several meters away. This person was incredibly fast, taking down half the rescue team in the blink of an eye. Even John, who was agile, couldn't withstand her. Marcos's lasers were fast, but his lifting speed was a fatal flaw. He used 2 laser beams to trap her. With Clarice's teleportation, John was sent above her, delivering a knockout punch. Their coordinated effort finally subdued her, sounding a warning to everyone. A single traitor was already hard to deal with. If they didn't uncover the reason, they were doomed. But the problem was her speed. Dreamer's mist couldn't catch her. Even if it did, it would quickly be metabolized. Lorna's straightforward approach was to control flying knives and corner her, but she couldn't understand Lorna's words. Luckily, Marcos noticed something. He recognized the traitor as an addict and suggested using withdrawal symptoms to break her. Andy used his powers to push her into a corner, and Lauren sealed her movements with an air wall. The doctor seized the opportunity to inject a tranquilizer, welding the unconscious woman to an iron bed. Lorna tightened the iron bars with her powers as her comrades found her records. It turned out she was also a victim. Her daughter was gravely ill, but the hospital refused to treat mutants. When she argued with the director, she was captured by the Sentinels and transformed. Lorna could see her desperation and called Esme to read her thoughts. Esme saw a lab full of modified mutants. She was about to delve deeper when the woman died from the drugs. This deeply affected Lorna. who was about to become a mother herself. Every time her baby moved, it disrupted the surrounding magnetic field, causing metal objects to go haywire. Lorna could control it during the day, but at night it was a different story. What she feared came true. She had a nightmare. In her dream, she wandered into a lab, growing more anxious with each step. Each cell contained her dazed comrades. Her unease made her quicken her pace until she saw Marcos in the next cell. But he was already incoherent. From the next cell came a baby's cry. Lorna saw it was her unborn child. Simultaneously, both dream and reality, Lorna lost control. With Marcos's soothing, Lorna calmed down, but they didn't know it was not a nightmare but a forthcoming reality. Dr. Roderick had revived the Hound program. Once approved, mutants would become legal test subjects. To disrupt the summit, they set an ambush along the route. Soon, a luxury car approached. A comrade suddenly jumped out to block its path. Lorna used flying knives to puncture the tires. Franklin quickly locked the car doors, but John yanked the door off and forcibly took her to the safe house. Facing death, Franklin still mouthed off, mid-sentence.
Don't even deserve to breathe the same air and exterminate you like cockroaches.
You don't want to breathe the same air? Then stop breathing.
Franklin felt intense suffocation. Esme, clearly enraged, was about to kill him but was stopped by a comrade. They reminded her of the bigger picture. Esme, knowing the gravity of the situation, restrained herself. After letting Franklin catch his breath, they began to interrogate him.
Hello, this is Franklin Bennett. Make a change to my security detail.
I need to make a change to my security detail.
Of course, Mr. Bennett.
They disguised themselves as Franklin's team and infiltrated the summit. Clarice opened a portal, and Marcos and two others went ahead. Lorna was responsible for disrupting radio frequencies, rendering all communication devices useless. Seeing Lorna's success, Marcos initiated the plan. John sensed Roderick's destination was the third floor. They quickly ambushed the elevator. When Roderick exited, Marcos used his powers to blind everyone. Unexpectedly, there was also a mutant among them who interrupted Marcos's spell. Luckily, John's agility allowed him to swiftly neutralize the bodyguards, leaving only Roderick. Unexpectedly, Roderick used a child as a human shield. Marcos was caught in a dilemma, unable to attack or retreat, watching helplessly as Roderick backed into the elevator. Suddenly, three armed bodyguards emerged from behind, opening fire without hesitation. Fortunately, John was invulnerable, using his body to shield Clarice, who couldn't dodge in time. But this wasn't sustainable, so they had to retreat. Though the police weren't about to give up, seeing the police closing in, Lorna took action.
Charlotte, 2 cars in pursuit.
They barely escaped, returning to the safe house, yet Lorna grew more uneasy, knowing how cruel those people could be to mutants. She couldn't even protect herself, let alone raise a child. If they were all as merciful as Marcos, the enemy would only push harder. She decided to create a better world in her own way, one where they wouldn't have to hide. So she went alone to the doctor's private airport, planning to cause an aviation accident. Lorna had fully embraced her dark side, determined that no one could sway her decision.
You don't want to do this. I don't care about the X-Men. I don't care about the Brotherhood. I care about my family.
That's what I care about too. But I'm tired of hiding. It's time to make a new world.
Lorna! Don't do it, no!
When Marcos looked up again, Lorna was gone. Meanwhile, the mutant base was under siege by the Sentinel services. Luckily, Lorna's trainees had unique abilities, using their powers to slow the attack and buy time for the main group to retreat. However, the enemy also had mutants who easily repelled their efforts, products of the Hound program. Realizing they were outmatched, they retreated. Andy and Lauren stayed behind to cover their escape, their hands tightly linked, emitting a daunting golden light. But the Hounds were unfazed, having no concept of death. With the golden light erupting, the entire mutant base began to crack and disintegrate, turning to ruins. Only the siblings survived. Marcos, after all his efforts, was faced with an all-out war. As they considered their next steps, the darkened Lorna appeared. She urged everyone to join her in creating a new world. Marcos was the first to refuse, disagreeing with her approach. Lorna didn't force him, knowing everyone had their own path. To her surprise, Andy chose to stand with her, followed by 3 others. Sometimes, parting ways was the best outcome. Months later, Lorna reached her due date. Even a slight pain could pull a 6-ton car towards her. Her comrades were terrified by the scene, but Lorna was used to it. A simple fetal movement caused such a stir. What would happen during labor? To be safe, her comrades rented a military base with 56-meter-thick concrete walls. They also built a special delivery room with tempered glass flown in to isolate all metal objects. But things didn't go as planned. That night, Lorna felt labor pains. Seeing Clarissa's lights around, it was clear the baby couldn't wait. But the metal objects outside the delivery room hadn't been cleared. As Lorna arrived, the delivery room became dangerous, with all metal objects gravitating towards her. They quickly moved Lorna inside. During the delivery, her uncontrolled powers posed a lethal risk. She disrupted the delivery room's power, and even the city's grid went haywire. Despite her efforts, the baby wouldn't come out. With each scream, metal objects outside seemed to worship her direction. Lorna was in difficult labor. Her bones felt like they were breaking. Her skin reddened, and her blood pressure spiked as she lost consciousness. The doctor said she was fading and urged everyone to prepare for the worst. Riva pleaded for the doctor to find a solution, but he was helpless. The root cause was psychological, not physical. She had lost the will to live. Riva had an idea. She instructed the Frost sisters to use their powers to invade Lorna's mind, creating a vision of mutants and humans living in harmony. In the vision, Lorna stood on stage, basking in the dawn of a new era. A child's voice called from behind. Lorna hugged her child, finally able to live in the sunlight. The love for her child revived her will to live. She remembered her original purpose and why she fought. When calm returned, Lorna delivered the baby safely. Both mother and daughter were healthy. Holding her baby, a sense of happiness washed over her. She named her Dawn, and her comrades were moved by the tender moment. As a new mother, Lorna didn't know how to care for a baby. Dawn was fussy, and Esme, seeing this, used her powers to calm the baby. Unaware, Lorna thought it was her doing. In an elevator, Esme hummed a lullaby, catching Lorna's attention. It was a lullaby she only sang to Dawn in private. Realizing her daughter's mind had been invaded, Lorna was furious and used her powers to suspend Esme in midair. She didn't want her daughter growing up under someone else's control. Just then, the elevator doors opened, but Lorna forced them shut. Lorna was about to teach Esme a lesson when Riva's powers intervened. Worried she might do something she'd regret, Lorna knew they were all in it together, so she couldn't explode in anger. She decided to stay by Dawn's side day and night. It said that a woman's bodily functions seem to strengthen after having a child, and Lorna was no exception. The slightest noise from the baby would wake her from a deep sleep. The thing she feared most happened. Dawn developed a high fever that wouldn't go down, leaving Lorna frantic. The doctor found that Dawn had severe jaundice, and regular light therapy wasn't effective due to her mutant genes. They needed the child's father to use his powers for treatment. Riva saw this as a chance to win Lorna over, so she sent Esme to find Marcos and clear up their misunderstanding. Before long, Esme returned with Marcos. He gently held his daughter, eyes full of love. Hearing his daughter's name, Marcos was deeply moved, as Dawn in Spanish means Aurora, symbolizing their love. But there was no time for sentiment. He quickly used his powers, bathing Dawn in a special light to heal her. Soon, Dawn's skin returned to normal, and the doctor declared her healthy, much to Lorna's relief. But this also meant she and Marcos had to part ways again. Their differing ideologies made it impossible to work together. When Marcos handed over a gift he had made for their daughter, he regretted letting Lorna go. Now he wanted to stay for her and their child. Marcos was then controlled by Esme.
We said it's time to go.
Leading him to leave involuntarily. As he was about to put on a hood, memories flooded back. At the last moment, Marcos broke free from the control, knocking out the Frost sisters and using his powers to burn one of them, intending to take Lorna and Dawn away. But Riva appeared suddenly, nullifying Marcos's powers. Refusing to give up, he tried to attack with his other hand, but his powers backfired, and he was thrown out. Despairing, Marcos drank the last drop from his bottle and smashed it. Lorna's voice echoed in his mind. He used his powers to send a brilliant light towards Lorna's direction, expressing his longing for them. The beautiful light cut through the night sky, with Lorna watching it in a daze. She missed him too, but for her daughter's future, she had to be ruthless. Rebecca's power was turning pancakes into fried rice, but she didn't notice her parents' greedy eyes, happily eating her breakfast. Unbeknownst to her, her father had sold her to a mutant lab for $50,000. Rebecca couldn't believe it until she saw the cold look in her father's eyes. She tried to escape but was caught, her hands bound, and a power-suppressing collar placed around her neck. Despite her talents, she couldn't escape her parents' betrayal. Such irony. She became a lab rat, enduring inhumane torture daily. Fortunately, Lorna accidentally rescued her during a mission, but the once cheerful girl had become sensitive and insecure, never using her powers or trusting anyone. She hadn't spoken a word since her rescue. If she continued like this, no one could help her. Esme tried to understand Rebecca with her powers, but the result was worse than expected. Everyone thought the girl was beyond saving, but Andy refused to give up. He went to Rebecca's room at night, using his telekinesis to break a bouncy ball. Seeing he got her attention, he spoke sincerely to her. With Andy's gentle guidance, Rebecca finally let her guard down. She raised her hand, and the bouncy ball flipped over.
My name's Andy.
Rebecca.
Andy then took her out for burgers, and she ate 2 in one go. Feeling satisfied, her mood improved. Andy asked about her powers, and Rebecca didn't hold back. With a slight effort, she flipped a soda bottle upside down. She explained she could alter the dimensions of objects. She then wrote letters with ketchup, flipping them to spell Andy's name. Andy found it incredible. Just then, a police car drove by. Rebecca planned to prank the police. When they got out, she flipped the entire car. Andy didn't want to cause trouble, but couldn't resist her coaxing. With a strong pull, he tore the police car into pieces, leaving it in a heap of scrap amidst explosions. They were thrilled even when they returned to base. Their affection grew rapidly, and they couldn't help but kiss each other. As Rebecca became more cheerful, her powers grew more effortless. A 1-foot-thick safe could be flipped with ease. Her teamwork with her allies also became more seamless. With a wave of Andy's hand, for simulated sentinels charging from the front were knocked down. Bullets fired from behind were all deflected by Lorna. Rebecca finished off the task by reversing the sentinels' directions and then twisting space, easily wrapping up the battle. Soon, they faced their first mission, but their brazen demeanor made it clear they weren't just robbing a bank. A guard was the first to resist, but Esme quickly subdued him before he could raise his gun. They had a right to be cocky, but the real show was yet to come. Lorna raised her hand, short-circuiting all electronic devices. Seeing this, the security guards drew their guns and fired wildly, but bullets were a joke to Lorna, and Riva's ultrasonic scream spread throughout the building, bringing everyone to their knees, clutching their ears. Lorna seized the opportunity to disarm everyone, securing the bank's ground floor with ease. They then split up, with Riva locking everyone in the conference room. Esme used her powers to force the bank manager to reveal years of evidence against mutants. Meanwhile, the other 3 headed to the basement, where Lorna forced open the elevator doors to access the vault. It was Rebecca's turn to perform, and she needed to flip the vault. The vault was thicker than her power's limit, and several attempts failed. Andy suggested she recall her lab experiences, flooding her with pain, anger, loneliness, and despair. Rebecca finally snapped, channeling all her resentment into a powerful wave, knocking everyone back with a strong shockwave as space twisted around her. Relief washed over her, but it marked the start of tragedy. As they prepared to leave, the manager's incessant chatter angered Rebecca. Feeling the punishment wasn't enough, she ignored her comrades' pleas and used her powers, filling the conference room with countless spatial shards. In the next moment, the world went silent. Rebecca felt no remorse, only a sinister smile. Riva's interest was personal. Her fiancé was among the casualties, planting seeds of revenge in her heart. On the run, Lorna scolded Rebecca, who retorted that they only saw her as a tool. She used her powers to flip the car door and stormed off. The streets soon bore Rebecca's grisly handiwork, but her retribution was swift. She was captured and placed in a rotating cube, disorienting her and preventing her from using her powers. Riva orchestrated this, sparing her only because she was still useful. Andy couldn't bear her suffering and pleaded with Riva, who told him to mind his own business. Andy used his telekinesis to rip open the cube, planning to escape with Rebecca, but Rebecca's intent to kill everyone made Andy regret his actions. Just as he tried to reason with her, the elevator doors opened. Rebecca spread her arms, ready to kill everyone like at the bank. In a critical moment, Andy's telekinesis interrupted her, but he used too much force, sending Rebecca crashing into a pillar, killing her instantly. The pain of losing his love was unbearable for Andy. He couldn't understand Rebecca's stubbornness. Lorna explained she, too, had been tortured in a lab. Even if mentally intact upon entering, they left scarred. The real culprits were those who made and used the collars. It was time for a reckoning. To destroy all human malice, Lorna led Andy to the collar headquarters. The servers represented their comrades' suffering. Remembering her own subjugation by the collars, Lorna's anger exploded. She rose into the air and unleashed her full power, deactivating all the collars. Mutants, long oppressed, finally broke free. Smiling for the first time in ages, Andy, not to be outdone, destroyed all the servers with a roar. Mutants worldwide removed their collars, reborn after long oppression. But not only the innocent benefited, but also the true criminals. These highly skilled mutants could make objects boil, teleport, and explode. Their combination had killed thousands. Lorna couldn't understand why Riva would recruit such monstrous individuals. Facing Lorna's questioning, Riva didn't answer directly but showed her a news segment. The anchor vehemently declared that mutants were beasts, unworthy of living. Riva then told Lorna that to rebuild the world, they must first destroy it. Hence her plan to blow up the human government. But Riva's ideology completely contradicted the team's original purpose. If such a group ran wild, neither humans nor mutants would ever find peace. To thwart Riva's plan, Lorna purposely injured her arm when no one was looking. She used the excuse of treating her wound to sneak into the control room. Using her powers, she hacked the computer, finding Max's travel records. Seeing he frequently bought drinks at a bar, she secretly contacted Marcos. She sent him to kidnap Max, believing that disrupting one member of the trio could delay Riva's plan. However, the plan went awry, and Max's resistance turned the kidnapping into an assassination. When Riva heard about Max's death, she flew into a rage. She ordered a lockdown of the entire base, determined to find the mole before their mission. They quickly traced it to the computer, but to everyone's shock, Esme accused Sage, not Lorna. Sage, with her superintelligence, could easily hack passwords, and Esme couldn't read her mind, thus unable to prove her innocence. Sage became Lorna's scapegoat and was brutally killed by Riva. Sage's death was like a stone sinking into the ocean, unnoticed by anyone except for Lorna, who felt a sharp headache. Seeing Andy's indifferent expression, Lorna deeply regretted bringing him to this heartless place. She then revealed Riva's entire plan to Andy. Fortunately, Andy's conscience was still intact, and he vowed to join Lorna in stopping Riva's scheme. But fate was cruel. Soon after, Esme approached Andy. When the siblings tried to resist, Esme controlled their minds and took them to the Sentinel services. The Frost sisters then forced the siblings to blow up an entire building. When they came to their senses, the place was already in ruins. Lorna arrived too late, and to make matters worse, Esme wanted them to kill each other. In a critical moment, Lorna turned one of the sisters against the others. While they were distracted, Marcos knocked out the other two, successfully rescuing the siblings. But there was no time to celebrate. They needed to eliminate Riva immediately. It was easier said than done. As Riva's powers went beyond ultrasonic waves, she could disable abilities and even prevent thinking. When everyone was at a loss, Andy's father stepped forward, claiming he could handle it. He kissed his wife goodbye and resolutely faced Riva. Riva was shocked they sent such a weakling, and she opened her mouth to send him to hell. Reed felt a splitting headache but didn't retreat. Moving closer to Riva, his uncontrollable power grew stronger with anger, making him Riva's natural enemy. But the price was his life. With a massive explosion, the entire base was destroyed. Soon after, mutants enjoyed a long-awaited peace, and Lorna finally reunited with her loved ones, savoring happiness like never before.